Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone. Goedemorgen, good morning, buenos dias. Back in 2018, three events happened in my life. I came to the Netherlands with my family. That's probably the biggest impact. I joined Philips, and I created my GitHub account. I had to admit that those days I was working, very closely. Collaboration was not like a big thing for me. Over the last 5 years, I have to say that today, everything I do in Philips is InnerSource and available to everyone in the company. And this is the story I'm going to tell you today. Let's move on. Hey, we are in Eindhoven. Typically when we do these talks, we have to explain a little bit. Philips is not a consumer anymore, but hopefully you know that now we are fully focused healthcare technology provider. We provide meaningful innovation to improve people's lives. And more importantly, we are becoming quite a software company. Our target internal developer community is more than 7,000 people, so our team is helping all those in the way that they create software on a daily basis. What is InnerSource? Let's start from that. So InnerSource is lately quite popular, so maybe most of you know, maybe some of you know at least. But essentially it's to create an open source community within your enterprise and follow the same ways of working and principles. You want to create collaboration, you will have maintainer teams, you will have contributing teams, you want to have contributing guidelines for people. Essentially it's to create your community within the company. And this logo here, and for those of you who are interested in getting more details, it will drive you to the InnerSource Commons organization, which is a set of people, set of companies that they are passionate about this. We share ideas, we exchange knowledge, we arrange conferences. So I really recommend that you go there and take a look, and there's a lot of learning path there to be taken. So why InnerSource? And this DevOps conference, so all of you probably know the DORA reports. I'm, chasing those things from since 2016, so they started. One of the recurring themes is that research is showing that successful organizations, they have some way to build upon the work of others, right? And in the recent report that it was very, recently released, we can read this. Generative cultures improve business performance by 30%. So what is a generative culture? This paper from Professor Westrum from Michigan University is explaining that essentially there are 3 types of cultures, and they are heavily influenced by the way that information flows in the company. There is a type of companies where it's called a pathological, so very personal driven. So leaders' personalities like driving everything into one direction, sometimes with a lot of politics and struggles. There are bureaucratic companies where department is the king, and standards and processes are the way to really drive information. In some of those cases, companies struggle to drive or to operate under a crisis, for example, because there has to be like a channel predetermined. And generative cultures are based on purpose. So they are aiming that the right information goes to the right person at the right moment in the right place. And those generative cultures tend to influence or create a sphere of creativity. They have satisfaction, they have cooperation between people. And those terms are really, really well aligned to the InnerSource principles that I was describing, and of course with open source principles as well. Precedents. Philips has been working on some kinds of collaboration models and reuse for quite some time. So we had both the global initiatives that were trying to create a portal where people could go and share stuff with others. We had also local initiatives where platform teams, they were trying to improve the way that they could collaborate with different business units in the company. And some of those took some lessons learned that we could use to improve some of the things that we are doing. But one of the common challenges that we found is that those initiatives were trying to add like some kind of layer on top of existing complexity. And that complexity was related with tools, with processes, with ways of working on culture. So in some cases, you were trying to connect 2 teams, very different, using totally different systems, source code management, and it was really, really difficult to collaborate. So those precedents, that story helped us to frame a new initiative that we have been running over the last 3 years. So we're calling that how to succeed, hopefully, I could say. So first of all is that from that experience, having one ecosystem where people really can get together and share basic fundamentals on the tooling and the ways of working is essential. Right? You cannot collaborate unless you have like a foundational common layer, a common language that you can use. Number two is that Philips is working mostly on medical grade software. So that means that we have a lot of regulations in place that we have to comply with. So you always have to find a way that you allow collaboration while having this compliance in place. And luckily enough, a lot of the InnerSource and open source principles are based on this relationship between a set of maintainers and a set of contributors that they contribute. So we could use things like branch protection, for example, in order to ensure that you can have like a low friction compliance model to accept contributions from other teams without having to train them like for a few days in the particular domain that you are working for. Self-service first. That was another of the pillars or fundamental areas that we are using in our day-to-day. So we want to empower people, for people to do their job and to go into a more continuous value delivery eventually. So we don't want people to file tickets here and there to get things down, because that's creating a pattern that people have to wait, and that wait creates more work in progress and essentially is like a waste in your productivity. Last but definitely not least, community. Community has to be at the core of this. So you have to find ways that your people really get together and they don't use InnerSource as a kind of a hobby in the evenings. So InnerSource has to be a fundamental principle that they follow. And if you're a platform team, for example, working for others, you have to think how you can coach and teach and help your community. If you are a business team consuming from others, you also have to be ready to contribute when there is something very particular for you that maybe the platform team doesn't have in the roadmap in the short term. So those 4 pillars are helping us to move forward this at scale in a company, as I said, with more than 7,000 developers. Let's take a look a little bit on the story or the timeline over the last years. As many things in big companies, I have to say that this started because, few brave people with the right passion, with the right motivation, right skills, and maybe right problem to solve, they got together. And in this case, it was at the core of a team called Software Concepts within the Philips Research organization, that they were having their own struggles with fragmentation, many small projects, need to collaborate between teams, collaborate with external partners. So they decided to bring a new system that those days were, these days as well, it was a GitHub Cloud. So that was also a kind of a revolution for us, because most of the systems were mostly on-prem in our own facilities. So it was a big change. And that change really was the seed that helped us to be here today and talking. And as I said, it's because few people with the right thing in their minds and the right problem to solve, they took some of the right steps. 2021, it was, what we're calling general availability. So the pilot was very successful. It was even exposed outside the boundaries of the regional scope. And our innovation strategy department and our IT department, they said, hey, this looks great. We have a problem that we want to solve, which is fragmentation and collaboration between teams. Let's use this for the whole company. So 2021, it was the year where we started to really focus on how we can scale this, getting everything in place that we can really use it by a big community. We use a lot, as I said before, self-service. We arrange issue operations, for example, to onboard new users. So if you wanted to join the ecosystem, you don't need to create a ticket and, as I said, wait hours or days to get it solved. You can go there, self-invite you, or you can invite a colleague. And that creates a very nice environment where you are at the coffee corner, you're talking and say, hey, by the way, have you learned about this? And then you can immediately join and be part of the community and access code from many colleagues. That was really one of the drivers of this scale. Our compliance bot is, again, another way to solve particular problems in a different manner. So compliance used to be solved with written documentation and gatekeepers, right, and manual approvals. With this bot, we work really on runtime checks. So when you are doing something, you get one of our bots that is scanning our archive and filing issues against certain rules, for example. And a rule could be you need to have a README in your repository, or you need to claim a repository for a particular business unit of Philips. And those rules that are codified, they are implemented or they are checked by our bot and filing issues for you to take actions. But again, it's always non-blocking. So we're trying not to block people so they can really continue innovate. Because essentially when you create a repository, most of the times at the beginning is blank. You don't know exactly what's going to be there. So you have to have always like a runtime check. Community Fabric is essential. So we have a lot of tools, like definitely GitHub, but we also have Microsoft Yammer, Microsoft Teams, we have the Slack, many options that were trying to connect people, but none of them, it was really tailored to capture knowledge that was happening in the day-to-day. So from that perspective, we also wanted to have a system that you can codify small pieces of knowledge to reuse it as a question and answer database. So for that, we started at the same time a pilot with a Stack Overflow for Teams, and that became our community fabric that is connecting people and on top of the rest of the system, for example, like GitHub SaaS, as I mentioned. Things kept growing, and from those few hundred users that we had at the beginning, we grew up until to 4,500 in 2022. So, things were getting relatively big. So we have tens of thousands of repositories. We have more than 3,000 weekly pull request merge, and that was a sense of everything was going like in the right direction. We were growing both in activity and in contribution, right? And this is one of the areas that we also have to keep in mind. How do we see where we are? But I will talk about that later, so I don't want to spoil it now. Third thing is that at the same time that we were creating this collaboration environment, we also took the opportunity to offer extra services like platform engineering services to people. As one of the key services that we were offering is our cloud scalable runners, GitHub runners. Essentially, if you have a repository in our environment, you can register as a self-service and for free and get cloud runners to solve or to automate your workflows. And those runners are ephemeral. They are created and destroyed over the time. And from your perspective is pure one click. So you don't really have to care about anything. So what we've seen over this journey is that with this model of mixing services and community, you get a kind of attraction for two types of audience. People that are really trying to collaborate further and people that are trying to modernize their own tool set. And this is working quite good for us. 2023, so where we are right now. So next step on the evolution path. In this case, now we have what we're calling a true development environment. So we are offering a catalog of services. You have things like mission critical, like of course GitHub, but we also have the GitHub runners that we offer to everyone. We have artifact management, and you also have some kind of extra value add services. In our case, for example, another tool that we introduced recently to all our developers is SonarQube Enterprise. And SonarQube has been there for quite a while. So many teams in Philips are even using it. The difference here is that we have introduced it as a self-service again. So if you have a repository in GitHub, you can easily hook up your SonarQube project with one click and get it done. Theory seems fine. Let's take a look to some of the day-to-day examples. As I said, we are self-service joining to the community. So if I want to join the community, let's say I'm new in Philips, I will go to one of our platforms and I will request, and I will immediately get an account connected to my Philips credentials. One of the bots that we have behind the scenes, which is essentially an event pipeline that is scanning what's happening in GitHub, it will file a GitHub issue for me, giving me some references, some training, and even some tasks that I should perform to complete my onboarding. For example, we have a software compliance training that we want people to do to explain them things like security or a regulation, how it works. So those things will get assigned to you automatically in this GitHub issue. Developer portal, few words. If in our case, we needed a way to funnel everything to the people, to be like a main window for them. So in our case, we use Backstage-based developer portal, where you have multiple features, 150 plugins. But in our case, three of the big features from these Backstage-based portals are that you can catalog easily software assets for a local, for a global organization. You can have technical documentation, so moving from your Markdown into a published static website that you can access for the rest of people, so you get your technical documentation close to your code. And you also have smart templates or scaffolders. So essentially, you can create a project following few steps, or you can modify an existing project, for example, to add new things, like, for example, new steps on your pipeline. The rest of the examples will be snapshots of our developer portal. This one, for example, is helping you how to create a new project. I fill some settings, and then I can create a new project my main branch, get the runners, and everything is behind the scenes created for me. The next one is our Actions Marketplace. I want to enhance my pipeline. I can go to a particular place in the portal and learn what others are doing and pick some of those building blocks and enhance my pipeline by adding new things. We can also publish, of course, my content. Let's say my project now is ready, so I'm satisfied with my test automation, documentation, contributing guidelines, my community guide. So I can publish easily through the portal again. This will open a pull request to my code base with the required metadata that I can really post and publish my component in the portal. So we differentiate things and we can make it discoverable. And definitely, last but not least, we can add external partners. Let's say teams are working with a university, with a research institute, with a contractor, and they need to give access to a particular project. We have a built-in mechanism where you can add users to a particular repository following a pull request standard workflow with everything secured. Last thing that we offer a lot, as I said, is our Stack Overflow community. You can link particular tags to a particular services, either global or local, and then you can, in one page, see, for example, whether the last questions on Stack Overflow for SonarQube in this particular example, I can ask a new question if needed. So everything, the whole ecosystem is interconnected. Everything didn't went well, of course. So some things are always challenging. Migrations, we put a lot of energy, documentation, teams, external support. Migration eventually is complex, and every team working on something complex, they need their time, they need to take the lead. So one of the things that we learn in this is that you cannot push people. You have to support people, and you have to explain what are the benefits, and they will take the lead, and then you can support them. You cannot really push. They have to pull from you. That was like a hard learning. We spent a lot of time that maybe now, with some perspective, I could do it differently. And processes go along. So the teams, they have to evolve their tooling, their process, and their culture, and everything goes together, which is indeed the next slide. So culture has to go along. So if you define an ecosystem like what we are doing, it has to be consistent with the culture that you want. You want a culture of autonomy, collaboration, and self-service. You have to set up your system in the same way, right? Otherwise, people get confused, like saying, okay, you are telling these magic things, but then I go to the system and I have to file a ticket to get approvals from IT, right? That doesn't work. So you need to be consistent between your culture and what you are deploying. KPIs and metrics. I'm very fan of metrics, sometimes too much. And at the beginning, I was like obsessed with the amount of information we could get with these open environments. Stay away from KPIs as much as you can. They influence behavior too much. And be also realistic with the KPI, with the metrics that you take. It's good that you can observe your system, but don't get obsessed with it. So try to find the right spot. That could also be my advice. Recurrent battles, they pop up again. Every item that you think has been discussed, agreed with the right people, eventually will be reopened again, and all of a sudden you will be again in a room talking about the same topic you talked like 3 months ago. But be patient, keep pushing in the right direction. In the moment that you hold back, things move on again, and then you do steps back. how do you prioritize your backlog? So we have like a tremendous amount of feedback from people. I want to do this, I want to do that, I would like to do this, I would like to do that. So our advice would be definitely focus on things that are actionable. So if you get some feedback that you can really do, even in that particular moment, just do it. Number two is use a lot of pull. So when people want something, if they pull from it and they are able to contribute and co-create with you, that means that it's important for them. That means that the probability of that to be valuable is much, much bigger. So I would recommend to use that pull and ask for contribution. People, we've seen that, so even at the first time they get confused. Can I do this myself? Of course you can, that's the model. And get some metrics on what's happening, what's working and what is not working. That's also would be my advice. Understand what's going on. Achievements. Last year, we made a kind of a nice stop and go with GitHub, and we co-created some case study on the transformation that we were doing at Philips. And it was a good moment to also reflect and see some of the things that were really nice. Like, for example, 85% of the repositories we have in the ecosystem, they are really shared with the rest of Philips developers. That's a nice achievement. 15%, of course, they have reasons to keep it closed. And we are saving a lot of infrastructure cost with ephemeral cloud runners that we create and destroy instead of having like static virtual machines waiting for the jobs to be run. So that's really a very nice achievement, also well perceived by our own management, of course. And in our survey, we saw that 70% of the people, and we got like more than 400 responses in that particular survey. We were really proud of the reaction. They said, my productivity and my satisfaction has been increased with this change compared with my legacy system. That was also, of course, encouraging and a reason why we can continue. Open source, Philips is doing some open source. In particular, this project, which is the Terraform module behind our scalable runners, has got very good traction from other companies. And we got contributions from other companies to support new architectures, to support, for example, Windows runners, or even to support GitHub Enterprise Server. Our solution is in cloud. So those contributions are now part of the project, of the product. And then we want to go in that model more and more. So we would like to be perceived and be part of a community more and more. Next steps. We are exploring our team, software excellence at Philips. We are responsible also to see what's going on and to learn and to bring things to the company. Right now we have open proof of concepts or evaluations of things like GitHub Copilot. We also have code spaces as one of the things that we want to take a look. For those of you that are not familiar with code spaces is a cloud IDE. So in our view, it might solve a particular challenge our teams have, which is to keep developer environments up to date. Take into account we are doing medical software, so everything is very controlled. So for some of the teams, it's difficult to update even versions of some particular tools. So they may get stuck in older versions, and that creates all kinds of issues, of course, as you know, like missing features, but more importantly, maybe missing security patches and other things. So how to solve that problem and help our business units to keep a modern tool environment up to date is one of the problems that we would like to help to solve. And another aspect that is being really active right now is our premium runners. So as I said, the runners is like an essential part of the day-to-day of a lot of our people. You saw 30,000 jobs a day. Now what we see is that some of those businesses, they have particular needs. They want maybe to customize the hardware. Maybe they need a bigger CPU. They need a GPU. They want to customize software. They want to have some pre-installed dependencies that maybe will speed up builds. So how to find the right model that we can work with them, help them to co-create that solution while us not becoming a bottleneck, because we are a small team and we won't grow to support those things. We have to be enablers for them to do it. That's what we are calling a premium service. Is a way that we work with someone, we help them to create something better, contribute it back to the community, and use it. And on the portal, we are doing exactly the same thing, using the developer portal, the automation based on Backstage, to help local teams to improve their day-to-day and their ways of working. As an example, we made a hackathon recently and helped a lot of teams to build like small things to improve the day-to-day. So with that, I want to say thank you for listening. I hope you can take something back from my journey since that first account in 2018 until today, that I could explain InnerSource at scale in Philips. And yeah, thank you so much. I'm happy to listen to your questions.
Thank you so much, David. We've got time for a couple of questions. Cultures of startups are often generative. As the company grows, more and more is put in processes. How would you prevent becoming a bureaucratic culture?
I can share with you the experience of acquisitions in Philips. You know, we acquire companies, of course. Lately, not so much, but in the past, more. And for them, that's part of the journey, how to turn into the model where you are part of the enterprise while still keeping some of your DNA and that culture that we see and we want on startups. And I don't have a good solution and a good answer. What I see is that you need to find your allies that will help you in this mindset. So, and some leadership support is always needed. You need some kind of a sponsor who is understanding your language and not only understanding processes. But from what I've seen in the last 5 years in Philips, you know, is quite a process-driven company. I could say that be resilient, keep trying, things can change, but it takes, of course, time, effort, and some, you know, some cries from time to time.
All right, we have time for one more. A lot of companies have concerns to use generative AI, copilots, etc. Because of data privacy. How about that? Is that a concern for Philips? Is Philips okay with this?
Our concern is generative AI is here. That's evident. We had a talk about that this morning. So our value proposition that we want to really test is if those things can help productivity without compromising code quality in the long term by adding you technical depth. And that's our biggest concern. So things like data privacy, security, we have our own proven channels to confirm that those things are suitable for a company. But as a software excellence team, that's a team that I represent, our biggest concern is that how we help people in this journey, because it's like a big thing for people, in particular people that maybe has less experience probably, and we want to be able to help them by trying ourselves and also provide guidelines, what may work, what definitely wouldn't work, at least not now. So that's what is important for us.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.